Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Janavallabha Girivardhari. Jaya Gopi Janavallabha Girivardhari. Yashodanandana Bhajana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Bhajana Ranjana. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama,
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Vishnupad Paramahansa Paravajakacharya Ashtotar the Sri Srimad Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Paravajakacharya Ashtotar the Sri Srimad His Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Ki Jai. Ananda Koti Vaishnavindra Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Srimad Bhagavad-gītā Ki Jai. Samaveda Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glory to Shri Guru and Gauranga. All right, 64. So we'll be on page 703 today. Your book. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. On this 4th day of February 2025 in San Diego, we're reading from Srimad Bhagavad-gītā as it is, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. And I should mention that today is the glorious anniversary of the appearance of Advaita Acharya, one of Lord Chaitanya's very intimate associates, who I can explain a little bit about him in the class. Very wonderful devotee. Okay, text 64 on page 703. Sarvaguyatamam Bhuya Shinume Padamam Vachaha Isto Asi Me Dridhamiti Tato Bhakshyami Te Hitam Sarvaguyatamam Bhuya Shinume Padamam Vachaha Ishtosi me dridamiti Tato Bhakshyami Te Hitam Sarvaguyatamam Bhuya Shinume Padamam Vachaha Ishtosi me dridhamiti Tato Bhakshyami Te Hitam. Go ahead, Bhusha. Sarvaguyatamam Bhuya Shanume Padamam Vachaha Ishtosi me dridhamiti Tato Bhakshyami Te Hitam. Daniel, you want to try? Sarvaguhyatamam Bhuya Shinume Padamam Vachaha Ishtosi me dridhamiti Tato Bhakshyami Te Hitam. You want to try it? Sarvaguhyatamam Bhuya Shinume Padamam Vachaha Ishtosi me dridhamiti Tato Bhakshyami Te Hitam. Ladies. Sarvaguhyatamam Bhuya Shinume Padamam Vachaha Ishtosi me dridhamiti Tato Bhakshyami Te Hitam. Sarvaguhyatamam Bhuya Shinume Padamam Vachaha Ishtosi me dridhamiti Tato Bhakshyami Te Hitam. Go ahead, Asha. Sarvaguhyatamam Bhuya Shinume Padamam Vachaha Ishtosi me dridhamiti Tato Bhakshyami Te Hitam. Okay, I'm going to read the word by word, as you can follow along silently. Sarvaguhyatamam, the most confidential of all. Bhuyaha, again, Shinu, just here, me, from me. Paramam, the supreme. Vachaha, instruction. Ishtaha, asi, you are dear. Me, to me. Dridam, very. Iti, thus. Tataha, therefore. Bhakshyami, I am speaking. Te, for your hitam, benefit. Krishna says to Arjuna, because you are my very dear friend, I am speaking to you my supreme instruction, the most confidential knowledge of all. Hear this from me, for it is for your benefit. Purport. The Lord has given Arjuna knowledge that is confidential, knowledge of Brahman, and still more confidential knowledge, knowledge of the Supersoul within everyone's heart. And now he is giving the most confidential part of knowledge, just surrender unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead. At the end of the 9th chapter, he has said, Man Manaha, just always think of me. The same instruction will be repeated here to stress the essence of the teachings of the Bhagavad Gita. This essence is not understood by a common man, but by one who is actually very dear to Krishna, a pure devotee of Krishna. This is the most important instruction in all of Vedic literature. What Krishna is saying in this connection is the most essential part of knowledge, and it should be carried out not only by Arjuna, but by all living entities. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnanandana Salakaya Chakshu Unmidatam Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkest of ignorance, but my spiritual master, Srila Prabhupada, opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer humble obeisance unto him and all members of Sri Parampara. So, those of you who have come here, and maybe this is your first time or haven't come in a while, it's very fortunate. Oh, please, not on the ground. Yeah, do we have any more? We ran out. Oh, here's one, not being used, yeah. We have a stand for you. Sorry about that. So this is very, very fortunate that you came, because these two verses that are going to be spoken, the 65 and 66, which we'll read in a minute, are like the essence of the whole teachings of the Bhagavad Gita. And it's interesting because in 66, Krishna says, Sarva Dharma Parityajya, give up all the other dharmas that I spoke already. Don't worry about them. You just do this one thing, you see. It all kind of it condenses in these instructions. Now, he's saying in 64, which we read, Bhuyaha, I'm telling you this again, because practically the identical verse, as is mentioned in the purport, was spoken at the end of the 9th chapter. Manmana bhava madbhakto madhyabdi nam namaskuru. Just think of me, become my devotee, honor me, or worship me, you surely come to me. That's the whole idea, which I'll explain later. So he repeats those words identically in the first line of the first verse, but then it becomes a little more intimate, because he says, I promise you this because you're my very dear friend. You see? So that wasn't there at the end of the 9th chapter. But this is the special position of Arjuna, but it's also our position as well. We may not know it now, but we're also very dear to Krishna, very dear to God. Otherwise, why would he bother to come down here and 5,000 years ago and have to deal with all the demons and everything who were trying to kill him, when he could just be up in Goloka Vrindavan playing forever, which is what he wants to do. Because we're his children. He said at the beginning of the 14th chapter, Sarva Yonisha Kontaya Murtayak Sambhavanti, that every living entity, and not in just human bodies, but all the living beings you see everywhere, the trees and everything, we're all children of Krishna. We're emanating from him. But some of us are more covered than others. Like these trees you see, and plants. They can't say anything, they can't really think much anyway, they just kind of live, and they know they're alive, and if they try to get some sun, and get some water, It's really a tragic situation. And we learn in the beginning of the Bhagavad Gita that every living being is ultimately a spirit. We're particles of spirit. We're never born and we never die. The body is certainly born, the body gets old, the body dies, but we're not the body. That's like the first thing you learn when you in Prabhupada's books. We're not the body. No living entity is the body. They're just within, the body's like a big machine, an amazing machine that's been created by nature under Krishna's control and guidance. But it ultimately, like all machines, they break down. And that's what death means. But if you're Krishna conscious, death doesn't have the same scary property that it does otherwise. Because if you're completely invested in things material related to the body or even the mind, which is also a subtle body, you see, then that's all being taken away from you. In old age, so many things are taken away, and finally the whole thing is taken away. Whatever you have, and whatever you've built, or whatever relationships you have, it's a very scary thing. But when your relationships and your treasure is in relationship to God, relationship to Krishna, then it's not a question of being taken away, it's a question of apotheosis, of it being realized in perfection. And so that promise of liberation from birth, old age, disease, and death, this is a basic principle of the Vedic culture. This wheel of samsara is very prominent in Buddhism also, right? Is that we have to try to break free from that. And anyone who contemplates for a little bit realizes those are our main problems. And they're insoluble on the material platform. I mean, yes, you'll get old and die. You may get old. You may not get old. And so many people die young. There's children dying, people dying of diseases. But the point is that it's an inevitable concomitant of material life. In the 8th chapter, Krishna has this verse, one line of which is very famous, Dukkaliyam ashashratam, that this material world is filled with all kinds of difficulties and miseries. Yes, there is some pleasure here, no doubt. But the general tone is that it's difficult. It's a hard struggle for existence. And that's true of every being. So, and it's temporary. Even if you find some peace and you find some situation, all right, I got it made now, you know, I have some money in the bank, I have a nice relationship, everything's going nicely. But it's temporary. This is the whole nature of the material world. There's something called Bhavasagara. Sagara means ocean. You know, we're very familiar with the ocean area. So you can see the ocean, it's always moving, right? It's changing. You see that the ocean is there. Yeah, but it's constantly changing. Sometimes it's whipping up, you know, with so many waves. Sometimes it's very Pacific, which is why, you know, when they first saw it, they thought it was much more peaceful than the Atlantic Ocean with all those hurricanes. All right, Pacific. But is it really Pacific? You know, you can have tsunamis, you can have all kinds of... So the ocean is a perfect example of things that are always moving and changing. So this is called Bhavasagara. This whole existence we're in is like an ocean of change. Everything is changing. And sometimes it's changing for the better, but oftentimes it's not changing for the better. And just the passage of time, in chapter 11, Krishna says, Kalosminoka chayakrit pravidho. This verse was made famous in one sense by Oppenheimer. Oppenheimer, I made that movie about him. He was the one who was in charge of the Manhattan Project, which meant building an atom bomb to end the World War II, way back in 1944 or 33. Believe it or not, he was a student of the Bhagavad Gita. And when the first atom bomb blew up, you can imagine. I mean, I read stories that they weren't really 100% sure that it wasn't going to blow up the whole Earth. You know, but well, we got to do it anyway. We got to test it anyway. And World War II. So it obviously didn't, but it was the biggest explosion there ever was. You know, so he quoted a verse from the Bhagavad Gita in the 11th chapter, where Krishna has revealed his magnificent universal form to Arjuna, in which he's got unlimited powers, and you know, he's frightening to Arjuna. And he says, so Arjuna says, "Who are you? You're not my friend Krishna." You know, this big, huge, and he was annihilating the party of the other enemies that Arjuna was fighting. He's showing the future. So Krishna answers in this form, this universal form, Kalosmi noka chayakrit pavidho. I am time, and I have come to destroy everything. You see, no one's going to survive on this battlefield except you Pandavas, basically. You know. So and Arjuna, with Krishna, he was a friend. He has this eternal friendship rasa called with Krishna. So, you know, he's very respectful, especially here. He's the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But still, there's a certain intimacy there. But with this universal form, he was completely frightened, even though he had asked Krishna to show it to him. And so he says, well, who are you? And so he answers, I am time, and I've come to destroy everything. Everything eventually will be turned to dust, you know. So this is the nature of this material world. It's asat. It's temporary. It's always changing. But we as souls don't change. We never die, we're never born. We're eternal particles of consciousness with Krishna's qualities in minute degree, you see? And how did we get here? There's a spiritual world, and most of the living entities, they never leave there. Why would they? We kind of made a big mistake by trying to imitate Krishna instead of serving God. The bliss, the eternal happiness is there in serving God, not in competing with Him. And that's where we are. So Krishna consciousness is a systematic process, a yoga process, by which we uncover and discover our original nature, which is as loving servants of God eternally. And there's the rasas. Where do we get pleasure in this world? By different rasas, relationships. Sometimes it's many things with inanimate objects. Sometimes those inanimate objects are made to appear as if they're animate, AI, right? They have robots now that'll serve you, you know, your hamburger, whatever. So, but can that really be satisfied? The thing is, those rasas are also temporary, and sometimes they turn to the opposite thing. You know, you're married with someone, but something happens, you know, and before it dissolves, you know. And even the children, I remember, I remember with my mother, I had a nice family. My parents were very affectionate and really helped me. But as time went on, I went my own way. And my father died first. My mother took care of my father. And my brother, older brother, took care of my mother. But I would visit them, And I would visit. She was already in her 80s, and I would fly up from Miami. I was serving in Miami at that time, and I had this cheap flight. Believe it or not, $69 round trip. Who can resist? So I'd go up to Hempstead, which is near New York, and she's, I'd visit her, and she immediately, as soon as I walk in, oh, nice to see you, Tom. She wouldn't call me dude. And of course, at one point, she'd want to feed me. The mother wants to feed. What can I serve you? So we have these dietary restrictions. So it's okay, make me a baked potato, with butter and everything, which I could eat, So that same rasa is there, that affection, and but ultimately, she passed, and it was broken. It was gone, So that's the nature of the material energy, the material life. So Krishna gives us here, and Srila Prabhupada personified a different future for ourselves, something to really aspire for. And that is a reinstatement in our original spiritual identity. We all have our special form, Some of us may be friends of Krishna, some of us may be parents, Even everything is completely fully conscious in the spiritual world. And everyone knows he's like a cowherd boy, with a flute. I'll tell you a little something that is fairly unusual. In my earlier days, when I was kind of searching, in my early 20s, everyone was reading Be Here Now. I don't know if they're still reading that. There was a book, and you remember. People of a certain age remember. And oh my God, Autobiography of a Yogi, everyone read that, And so I was reading these things, and Tibetan Book of the Dead, and whatever. So then eventually I encountered some of the images, the wonderful paintings like we have on the wall here. There were some posters in the yoga studio I was going to. And there was a picture of Krishna standing there with a flute, I was a flute player. I'd been from childhood, In fact, I would go out on the streets of New York and play, and do a little busking. We put a little basket out. I made $70 one day. Back in 1971, there's a lot more money than there is today. Anyway, I had all that. So I became very interested. God is as a flute player. Let me investigate that. So that helped me become attracted to Krishna. All these adventures. So I practiced. I got a serious. This was a real gift of Krishna. I was going along, and I got serious hepatitis. So much I was in the hospital for a month. This was July of '69, just when the moonshot was happening. I remember seeing it on the TV in my hospital bed, But it kind of really shook me. It was a serious case, and I came out, and I wanted a means of getting my health back, And I said, well, let me try this yoga stuff, because India was becoming popular, Ravi Shankar and George Harrison, So I looked in the yoga, and there was no yoga where I was, but I looked in the yellow pages. Remember the yellow pages? Got to be a certain age, And in New York, I was in Long Island, New York, there was this yoga studio. So I said, all right, let me drive in. And my father loaned me his car. And I started going there, and it wasn't a Krishna, yoga. It was Hatha yoga, Amala Bhakta. Now, he was the in charge. He became a devotee eventually. But at that point, I also became a vegetarian, which made me more receptive to the philosophy. And I encountered eventually the mantra. This Hare Krishna mantra. And I wasn't a Hare Krishna, I was working in a hospital as a inhalation therapist, taking out the oxygen and everything, But I was very philosophically inclined, and I got involved with Ramakrishna Mission. Some of you may have heard of those. They're still around. And eventually a friend of mine, he suggested we go down to the Brooklyn Temple, and we went down together, and that was my first exposure. But it was too much, the deities were a little bit too much and everything, and then what are these guys in orange carrying these huge plates of food, I thought, what's going on with that? Because I was eating, raw food, little raw. Anyway, I was fortunate enough to be philosophically inclined, and I read a book. It wasn't this book first. It was the Teachings of Lord Chaitanya, which is taken from the Chaitanya Charitamrita. And that was very fascinating to me, because his method was preaching, was basically going out and dancing and chanting and getting everyone to celebrate the holy name. You know, he was, of course, an Indian. And the movement, and when people tried that, and I tried it, you know, it has a wonderful effect. It really does enliven the spirit and give you a connection and make you curious about what's going on with this bhakti yoga. So Krishna is now winding up, and he's going to give us this verse, which I think we'll read in a minute or so. And he says, Sarva Guhyatamam. This is very confidential. Now, what does confidential mean? It's no secret. I mean, we're distributing these books by the millions, you know. But probably, you know, wherever he went, he asked people to chant Hare Krishna. So how is it secret? But it's confidential in the sense that it's not known so well. And even if someone knows about it, they usually don't know really what it's about and what the effect is. So therefore, Krishna calls it Sarva Guhyatamam, confidential. And my supreme words, Paramam Vacha. And so I'm going to tell you this because, you know, you're dear to me. And hitam, the word hitam is important. It means for your benefit. So let's now listen to these two verses. I put them into a little poem that I'll share with you also. So let's try text 65. Here's this essential message of the whole Vedas is right here. Manmana bhava madbhakto madhyaji mam namaskuru mame vaishyasi satyam te patijane priyosi me. Always think of me, become my devotee, worship me and offer your homage unto me. Thus you will come to me without fail. I promise you this because you are my very dear friend. And if you allow me, I'll just share with you my little poetic version. Just think of me, become devoted, worship me and bow down low. You'll come to me, O friend. I promise you this boon I shall bestow. And here he says, my very dear friend, Priya at the end there, which is not there in the 9th chapter. But really, we are Krishna's dearest friends. At the end of the 5th chapter, Krishna says, Bhokdaram yagitapasam sarvaloka maheshwaram suridam sarvabhutanam gyatvam shantamicchati. Probably call this the peace formula. When it can become peaceful inside and also the world can become peaceful. So Krishna says there, I am the enjoyer of all sacrifices, bhoktam yag and austerities. I am the Lord of all worlds, and I am the best well-wishing friend in the heart of every living entity. So Krishna there says, you know, he's the super soul. We're not here alone in our heart. The soul is in the heart, but God is in there as a super soul. He's giving us our remembrance, our intelligence, and our forgetfulness too. I often point out, some of you have been, that's also a blessing. Can you imagine having to remember all of the old ages and diseases and deaths of the last 500 births you had? No, massive PTSD. We couldn't do it. But all that is gone. We don't remember. But Krishna gives us intelligence. You know, he's there with us. So he knows everything about us, but he's our best friend. It's not like he's going to take advantage of us or anything. You see. So here he especially mentions Arjuna as your friend, and therefore I'm speaking this to you. But this is for all of us. So let me read the purport. Purport: the most confidential part of knowledge is that one should become a pure devotee of Krishna and always think of him and act for him. One should not become an official meditator. Life should be so molded that one will always have the chance to think of Krishna. One should always act in such a way that all his daily activities are in connection with Krishna. The other side, left side. He should arrange his life in such a way that throughout the 24 hours he cannot but think of Krishna. And the Lord's promise is that anyone who is in such pure Krishna consciousness will certainly return to the abode of Krishna, where he will be engaged in the association of Krishna face to face. This most confidential part of knowledge is spoken to Arjuna because he is the dear friend of Krishna. Everyone who follows the path of Arjuna can become a dear friend of Krishna and obtain the same perfection as Arjuna. These words stress that one should concentrate his mind upon Krishna, the very form with two hands carrying a flute, the bluish boy with a beautiful face and a peacock feathers in his hair. There are descriptions of Krishna found in the Brahma Samhita and other literatures. One should fix his mind on this original form of Godhead, Krishna. one should not even divert his attention to other forms of the Lord. The Lord has multi-forms, such as Vishnu, Narayan, Rama, Varaha, etc. But the devotee should concentrate his mind on the form that was present before Arjuna. Concentration of the mind on the form of Krishna constitutes the most confidential part of knowledge, and this is disclosed to Arjuna, because Arjuna is the most dear friend of Krishna's, and is disclosing it to all of us. So, what is it about Krishna? Well, the very name Krishna means all attractive. The word Krish there's the word karshati, which means to pull. There's also a plow, karshna, to plow, pulling. So all of the qualities that we find are attractive in human beings, beauty and humor and strength and fame, all of these things are there in Krishna, in God, in infinite matter, infinite degree. And they don't wane. We may have that quality of beauty for a while, but then it's waning, so I got to put all this makeup on, I got to do this and work out, but it's a hopeless case. Eventually, the attractiveness is gone, But Krishna, he sees us spiritually. It doesn't matter what age we are, how ugly we are, or how beautiful we are. We can become dear to Krishna by practicing Krishna consciousness. And it's such an incredible process, because Prabhupada set up the movement, of course he started simply. It's a wonderful story. I mean, first of all, here's someone who was in the most highest place in the world where you can practice devotional service is Vrindavan, where Krishna enacted these wonderful pastimes 5,000 years ago. There's so many temples, so many devotees, And he had a room in one of the main temples there, called Radha Damodar Temple. And so he could have simply done what many of his godbrothers did, to just stay in India, and gather some disciples and chant and go, and return, when you leave. But he had an order from his spiritual master, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, to try to preach this and teach this method abroad in English. Go to America or go to England. In fact, he had some other devotees go to England, but they didn't do much, weren't able to. So Prabhupada had that order, and he was trying to fulfill it during the time. The part of preaching in English, that was he had a little paper called Back to Godhead magazine. I eventually worked on that magazine when it came to America. I was very fortunate. And finally, a friend of his told him that these magazines are nice. I mean, they were little newsprint, like 12 pages. That somehow he found the money to print once every month. They said, these magazines, these papers, they'll be thrown away, but if you print some books, they'll be permanent, So Prabhupada undertook that. He had practically no money, he had to beg and raise the money for the first volume, sell the first volume so he could print the second volume. Eventually printed 3 volumes of really our most important book, which is called the Srimad Bhagavatam, or Bhagavad Purana. And it has 18,000 verses. This Bhagavad Gita has 700 verses, and he wrote with commentary. But he was going to do it with commentary, so he said, well, it'll be maybe 60 volumes of 400 pages each. Now he completed these first volumes in 1964, I think it was, 65 maybe. And by that time, he was 68 years old, And so, but still, he was planning to somehow finish this 60-volume thing. But when he had those volumes, then he said, now I have to go to America. And he had one friend she was a lady, Sumati Mukherjee, who owned a shipping line, believe it or not. And so he begged her, and he completed, and she gave him a free passage on a cargo ship. It wasn't really made for passengers, but there was a place he could stay. And he traveled in September of 65, August, September of 65, from Calcutta, actually, left there all the way to New York. Okay, and he had 3. The seasickness was getting to him, and he had 2 heart attacks on the way, and he said he was keeping a journal, and he said, I knew that if I had a third, I'd be finished. So in his sleep, Krishna came to him, and he said, don't worry, I'm going to take charge of the boat. Now I lived in Miami for 6 years. And Miami, you always have to, especially July, August, September, October, you have to watch out for the hurricanes maybe coming, So Atlantic, as we know, is rough. So he's going over the Atlantic. But Krishna said, don't worry, I'm going to take charge of the boat. And it was such it was like more peaceful than the Pacific Ocean, you know. And so the captain was there. He was with his wife. She was riding with him. She said, "Can you please come back with us, Swamiji? That was the most peaceful passage we ever had on the Atlantic Ocean." So Krishna was helping Prabhupada. But he comes to America, New York. He had one contact in Butler, Pennsylvania. Does that name ring a bell? That town, that city? Butler, Pennsylvania. Recently we had some incident there. I'm not going to get into it. Anyway, it was completely obscure. So he went there, and he stayed there for a couple of weeks, you know. And then he said, I can't do anything here. It's not enough. So he came to New York. In New York, you know, he had hardly any money. But he had a contact with Dr. Mishra, who was already established yoga. He was able to stay with him. But he really made success after almost a whole year by coming downtown. It was the middle of the hippie era, the middle of the 60s. You know, people were dropping acid, and they were getting into Indian music, and George Harrison was it. And especially Allen Ginsberg. Even today that name rings a bell, right? Very famous poet, you know. He had been to India, somehow or other, I don't know how, he picked up the Hare Krishna mantra. He learned the harmonium, and he would chant it. You know, he felt something, he didn't know exactly what. And then when Prabhupada started chanting, he was living in the Lower East Side at the time. That was one of the hippie areas. And Prabhupada was settled there also. And so he gave him his first harmonium. And because Allen Ginsberg was involved, there was an article in the New York Times about Prabhupada. And Prabhupada was very happy to, you know, publish. So it was a struggle, and it was a struggle the whole time. But Prabhupada, you know, he started traveling the West Coast, and then Montreal, visa problems. But he went through it all, and he spread the movement all around the world. In 12 years, he went around and around the world. So, and he did it all for us. He never cashed out. You know, these other yogis would come and they'd monetize what they had. You know, $35. Give me, you know, I'll give you the mantra. That was a transcendental meditation. You know. Prabhupada was never like that. Mantra, you want the mantra? Here it is. Take it. It's free. See. So this, you know, you came here. I don't think you even had to pay for the tacos, right? Tacos are free, and you came in here. I'm not charging you anything, right? So it's all free. Krishna is coming for free. And so here he's saying, but he's encouraging us, think of me, how to think of me. They chant the holy name. You can read the Krishna book Prabhupada wrote, which is all of Krishna's pastimes. You see, you can just sit in the class. You can, you know, become in a kirtan. Festivals coming up. You know, the festivals. Nityananda's appearance day. Next Sunday, is it, I think? Sunday. And if you could come in the evening, it's very ecstatic kirtan. Nityananda was Lord Chaitanya's sidekick, if you will. They were both, Nityananda is Balaram and Lord Chaitanya is Krishna, actually, but they came hidden. Some people didn't know right away their divinity. But they both were chanters and dancers. They enlivened all of Bengal, especially Navadvip and Mayapur, and very important avatar, Lord Nityananda. And it'll be a wonderful festival here on Sunday night. And then eventually, when August rolls around, there's going to be a Rath Yatra in LA that we all go up on a bus. Very wonderful, you know, and with 3 carts, and the deities on the right here, the Jagannath deities, and we're dancing and chanting, and then, you know, so many wonderful activities. And really, Krishna consciousness is set up to be a little festival every day. If you can come, you're invited, 4:30 in the morning, to Mangalarti. If you can't make it at 4:30, you know, we have another kirtan at 7:15, and then a wonderful class. It's all free, breakfast you can have, and we'll show you how to chant. The thing is, this chanting on the beads complements the chanting in concert. The dharma for the age is the congregational chanting. There's another verse I'll give you, which I put into a poem. It says, when there's repetition, just like Krishna repeats this verse from before, so when he repeats a verse, it's very important. So in this verse, there's so much repetition. Hare Nama, Hare Nama, Hare Nama eva kevalam, kalo nasteva, nasteva, nasteva gataranyata. If you want to achieve the supreme goal of life in this age, when dissension and chaos abound, There is no other way, there is no other way, there is no other way that can ever be found but to chant Krishna's name, but to chant Krishna's name, but to chant Krishna's name with a stout-hearted vow, and to pray, O Lord Krishna, O friend of the poor, that my head ever unto your lotus feet bow. So the chanting is essential, and Lord Chaitanya wrote the Shikshastika, 8 verses on the chanting, which I can share with you. I have this poetry, I have a whole bunch of it. If you're interested, just write to me, Dravida108, Dravida 108, @gmail, and I'll send you a PDF. And if you really want me to, I'll send you a recording also. So, why don't we go on? Now, these 2 verses, the next verse is said to be the summary of the whole teachings. Sarva dharmam parityajya mamekang sharanam braja aham tvam sarva papebhyo mokshiyasyami ma shuchaha. Abandon all varieties of religions and just surrender unto me. I shall deliver you from all sin-free actions. Do not fear. Give up all other dharmas and surrender only unto me. Your sins I'll nullify, O Arjuna. From anxiety be free. That's my little poem. Purport. The Lord has described various kinds of knowledge and processes of religion. Knowledge of the Supreme Brahman, knowledge of the Supersoul, knowledge of the different types of orders and statuses of social life, knowledge of the renounced order of life, knowledge of non-attachment, sense and mind control, meditation, etc. He has described in so many ways different types of religion. Now, in summarizing the Bhagavad Gita, the Lord says that Arjuna should give up all the processes that have been explained to him. He should simply surrender to Krishna. That surrender will save him from all kinds of sinful actions, for the Lord personally promises to protect him. In the 7th chapter, it was said that only one who has become free from all sinful reactions can take to the worship of Lord Krishna. Thus one may think that unless he is free from all sinful reactions, he cannot take to the surrendering process. To such doubts, it is here said that even if one is not free from all sinful reactions, simply by the process of surrendering to Sri Krishna, he is automatically freed. There is no need of strenuous effort to free oneself from sinful reactions. One should unhesitatingly accept Krishna as the supreme savior of all living entities. With faith and love, one should surrender unto him. The process of surrender to Krishna is described in the Hari Bhakti Vilas 11.676. Anukulyasya sankalpa pratikulyasya varjanam rakshishyatiti vishvaso goptritve vadanam tata atmanikshepa karpanye shadvidha shadanagatihi. According to the devotional process, one should simply accept such religious principles that will lead ultimately to the devotional service of the Lord. One may perform a particular occupational duty according to his position in the social order, but if by executing his duty one does not come to the point of Krishna consciousness, all his activities are in vain. Anything that does not lead to the perfectional stage of Krishna consciousness should be avoided. One should be confident that in all circumstances Krishna will protect him from all difficulties. There is no need of thinking how one should keep the body and soul together. Krishna will see to that. One should always think himself helpless and should consider Krishna the only basis for his progress in life. As soon as one seriously engages himself in devotional service to the Lord in full Krishna consciousness, at once he becomes freed from all contamination of material nature. There are different processes of religion and purificatory processes by cultivation of knowledge, meditation in the mystic yoga system, etc. But one who surrenders unto Krishna does not have to execute so many methods. Excuse me. That simple surrender unto Krishna will save him from unnecessarily wasting time. One can thus make all progress at once and be freed from all sinful reactions. One should be attracted by the beautiful vision of Krishna. His name is Krishna because he is all attractive. One who becomes attracted by the beautiful, all-powerful, omnipotent vision of Krishna is fortunate. There are different kinds of transcendentalists. Some of them are attached to the impersonal Brahman vision. Some of them are attracted by the Supersoul feature, etc. But one who is attracted to the personal feature of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and above all, one is attracted by the Supreme Personality of Godhead as Krishna himself, is the most perfect transcendentalist. In other words, devotional service to Krishna in full Krishna consciousness is the most confidential part of knowledge, and this is the essence of the whole Bhagavad Gita. Karma yogis, empiric philosophers, mystics, and devotees are all called transcendentalists, but one who is a pure devotee is the best of all. The particular words used here, ma shuchaha, don't fear, don't hesitate, don't worry, are very significant. One may be perplexed as to how one can give up all kinds of religious forms and simply surrender unto Krishna, but such worry is useless. So, as Prabhupada says, this is the essence of the whole teachings. And of course, as mentioned here in the purport, this is the process of surrender. You know, what does that surrender mean? So this is a verse from Hari Bhakti Vilasa. I think it's quoted in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu also. Anukul yasya sankalpa. Now let's just step back a bit and think of any process. If we want to go a course, say a course in college, and we want to get a degree, say a medical degree. So everyone knows that's not so easy, right? So you apply, and if you have good enough grades and everything, or good enough connections, you can get into the college and you can start studying medicine. So the courses that you take, I mean, I've heard that organic chemistry is very difficult to master, and it's kind of, you know, people who can't master it, they can't become doctors. So anyway, so what to do? You're starting your organic chemistry course. So there's certain things you have to do. You have to study. You have to attend class. You have to study. You have to take the tests. And there's some things you can't do. You can't party every night, right? Although you may want to, right? Because you have your ultimate goal. So there are do's and don'ts in anything. You want to become a great athlete, everyone knows you got to get a trainer. You have to, you know. I remember, believe it or not, I was thinking of joining the wrestling team in high school. It was pretty funny. It was kind of. But then I saw, you know, but oh, wait a minute, you know, the wrestling, everyone who wants to be a wrestler, they have to go out and they have to run every day for 20 minutes, you know, and get conditioning and all these things. All right, that's not for me, you know. So I spent 1 hour thinking that I would be part of the basketball team. But then I saw that was also, you know, so I said, all right, I'll just try to get the best grades I can and get into college. But the point is, whatever path you take, everyone knows if you're serious, you have to do certain things and you have to give up certain things, you know. So that's what is, the first part of surrender is taking on and accepting those things that are favorable for devotional service. I always like to tell the story of the first cold shower I took, you know, because I joined the ashram in Brooklyn in March 27th of 1973. Now, and that was in New York, and it's still pretty cold there, you know, so spring has just sprung, but it's still like winter, you know. So I'm in the ashram, and we're lining up to take our shower, because you get up real early and you have to bathe, you know, all this stuff. And there's no hot water, you know. So this is like a moment of truth. Am I going to just put my dungarees back on and, you know, and go out and leave? All right, I'll do it, because I had practiced hatha yoga. And there's, you know, pranayama, you know, breathing. But there's also the heating breath. You should try it sometime. I'm telling you, if you get. So I said, okay, I'll do that. You know, so I got my turn. I went in, you know, turned it, and I was able to take that cold shower. It was a short shower, maybe 16 seconds or so, you know. But that was like first test, you know. Anukul yasya sankalpa. So Krishna consciousness is full of things like that, you know, and any process you're doing. But if you want to surrender, and so that's the first two things. It's very logical to accept what's favorable and reject what's unfavorable. And everyone knows, you know, I mean, people know if you come here, you know, it's going to be vegetarian, you know, we don't eat meat. That's a big thing to give up to some people. And no intoxication at all, intoxicants, you know, that's a big one. No illicit sex, gambling. So that's pratikul yasya, those things that are against you have to give up. Then the next one is quite a, you know, rakshishyatiti vishwaso, to be confident of Krishna's protection in every circumstance. That's not so easy, you know. We're reading about Gajendra. Gajendra, he's an elephant. He had been a great king, but he committed some offense, and so he got cursed to be an elephant. he gets caught by in a lake by a big crocodile, and he's fighting, trying to, but he's out of his element. He's a powerful elephant, but he can't get out. So he at a certain point, after a long time, I won't remember how long, you won't believe it, that he finally remembers from his previous life this mantra that he had learned because he was a great devotee, and he offers that mantra in praise to the Lord, and the Lord comes down and saves him. But it's Rakshishyati Vishwaso, so he was confident of Krishna's protection, and he was calling upon him to protect, and there's so many instances of that, And then Goptadve, that Krishna will maintain. This is because what is life like? It's a hard struggle for existence. You got to keep body and soul together. You got to get a job, and this and that. And sometimes you lose the job, or you're getting paid, but it's not covering your groceries anymore because there's this horrible inflation, and it's very difficult. But to be confident of Krishna's maintenance and his protection. And then Atmanikshepa Karpanya means basically to be very humble and meek and accept, the services. So this is what surrender means. That's what Krishna is saying, you should surrender. And what we should remember also is that we're surrendered right now. Even if we're complete atheists, we're surrendered. Meaning that we have to surrender to the demands of the body. You're right? We have a job, we have to surrender to the boss, do what he wants. The husband has to surrender to the wife has to surrender to the husband. So we're already surrendered, but the thing is that's not helping us because these are what comes with the material body and material nature. So that surrender, that basic surrender, now we're still going to have to meet the bodily needs, but if we understand that they're all coming from Krishna and that we're trying to serve him, what does he really want? Chant my name, try to give these things up. Come to the temple, worship me, It's not like he's really demanding so much at first, anyway. But the point is that he's encouraging us to naturally become attracted to him because he's all attractive. And that attraction, but ultimately, how can we have this forever, to have this life forever? It means that the process of serving the Lord becomes a source of great happiness and bliss. And we have a reflection of that here. Just like in the most pure kind of love that we find, selfless love is a mother for a little child, a few days old or maybe a month old, Now where's the exchange? The child, can't really give anything material to the mother, but the child can give the love. The example, the mother is, the child is nice, warm, and he's healthy, and she just got through feeding the child, and the child looks up and smiles at the mother. No teeth yet, And that's all the mother wants, right? She's not saying, well, come on, what's it, it was $5. No. That's the exchange. That the child is happy to be loved by the mother and nourished by the mother, and the mother is very happy to. The pleasure is in the service, in seeing the other happy. That's the thing. In the material plane, it's all like, the Schadenfreude principle, which came out about the war, during the World War II. Happy at others being miserable. That is demonic. It's horrible to think like that. But to really be happy at others being happy. These are good people. There's some trouble going on. There's a flood or there's a hurricane, fires, and people come out to help those who are. We say, oh, this is a good person. And you're actually taking a deep pleasure in that and being able to help those who are in trouble. So that kind of pleasure in others' pleasure, we're part and parcel of Krishna. You see? When we can participate in giving him pleasure, we automatically become pleased. And we find that. And the thing about this, I want to end here because it's getting late, and that is that Srila Prabhupada, the wonderful thing about his books, you can see there's no doubt here. He's living this. He's giving us things that he's experiencing. Because it sounds amazing from the material point of view. It sounds Pollyanna. Come on, everyone knows everyone die. When you die, you're finished, No. All of this esoteric knowledge and these experiences, and it's not like there is no empirical evidence for transmigration of the soul. These little children in India, but everywhere over. You get on YouTube, this one boy in Michigan somewhere is, they're Christians, and he kept saying, no, I was a pilot, and this pilot of this plane, and it turned out that he was in World War II. He remembered. Sometimes you remember. The soul never dies. The soul is eternal, and so we should, if we can learn about this knowledge of how we can act in this lifetime to progress toward liberation from round of birth and death and return back to the spiritual world which exists. It sounds amazing. It doesn't compute materially. But all of these, Prabhupada came in a line of great souls who sacrificed themselves, and they wrote this and they confirmed the truth of this. That it's Krishna who is the ultimate God. There are many manifestations of God. But he's got all the opulences of the beauty and the wealth and the fame and the strength and all of these things, and detachment from everything material. So we should investigate it, read the books, and you're always invited to class. We have these classes 3 nights a week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. I've been doing it whenever I'm here. I've been here now since the pandemic started. I haven't gone anywhere. So it's like almost 35 years. We've gone around and around this. We're coming to the end of the Bhagavad Gita. No problem. We'll start again at the beginning. Ever fresh. It never gets old. Okay, so I'll end with one little poem to wind up. And first of all, you're all invited to write me. I have so many recordings. I have a recording of this whole book with the purports I can send you. Yes. And I did that way back in mid-80s, I recorded. So here's a little poem I wrote. There's a painting that goes with it, which you have to visualize. Krishna's sitting in the forest very peacefully. He's got a little bird, a little dove on his hand, and there's a swan there, and there's the little calf and a deer around him, just, taking in his beauty. The sweetness of Sri Krishna's form beguiles. Still sweeter is his face, like autumn moon. But sweeter than the sweetest is his smile, whose luscious beauty makes the gopis swoon. Govinda's beauty captivates the doves, the swan, the deer, and cows, and every tree. Indeed, in Braja, every creature loves Sri Krishna and is drowned in ecstasy. That all-enchanting land is paradise, our home, where we may dwell eternally. Most welcome there are those who pay the price to learn to love Sri Krishna perfectly. And really it is to relearn to love Krishna perfectly, because we once were there before. Okay, we'll adjourn. You're invited to join us for the last kirtan here to see the beautiful forms of Shri Shri Radha Giridhari. And if you haven't had enough tacos, there'll be more prasadam. All glories to Srila Prabhupada.